microphones. The light is on, so we're good.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for being flexible and coming at 4 o'clock tonight. That is very helpful, and I apologize for sending so many emails.
Me too.
This will be the only time you get that many emails. So a number of the items are just for reference. We've got an agenda that looks long, but I think a lot of the items are going to take only a few minutes. So, first of all is our minutes, speaking of minutes, for September 16. And I have no amendments to make. Does anybody have any amendments to suggest?
No, I did not have any.
Is there a motion to accept the minutes as written?
Moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So next is the minutes for September 24th. Has to do with the library. Again, I have no amendments to make to it.
Motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are accepted. Okay, Dexter Swayze is here to do with the Historical Society. He would like us to do a site visit. And he has suggested some times. And just, I think the general purpose is that he has a list of items on the capital improvements program. Good evening. And I think those are the items that he would like to review, particularly at the sidewalk. He's suggesting October 28th, November 11th, and November 18th. Those are all Mondays. And
Don't we?
28th, we have a meeting.
We have a meeting, yeah.
The 11th, we do. Okay. Okay, remind me of that when. November 11th, we do not have a meeting.
That's Veterans Day.
Does that work? Is there anybody that doesn't work for?
I'm not sure yet, but I can definitely do it.
Okay. Is there anybody that can't make it on the 18th?
I could do that.
So, what time would, Dexter, we can be there anytime, right? Is that what you said? Okay, 6 o'clock in the morning is going.
Don't tease him.
So on the 18th, you're saying?
Yeah.
So we have a meeting that night, so just.
November 18th?
Oh, we do, yeah. Yep.
Okay.
The
I mean, I'm fine with that. We just have to do it prior to the meeting.
Might be easier to do it on the 11th. Sorry about that. Yeah. Back to the 11th, and do we want to do it at 6 o'clock, our normal time, or is there another time? Would you rather do it sooner?
I can be flexible. Yes, and we can be pretty It's gonna be starting to get dark probably, so.
That's true,
It's
yeah.
still gonna
Yeah.
be dark because there'll be a time change. Won't there be a time change by then?
Yeah.
But in any event, so you wanna go with 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock?
Yeah. I could do
Everybody
it.
okay with 5 o'clock?
Yeah, sure.
5, okay. 5 o'clock, November 11th. Still able to be there, Dexter? Very good.
Thank you.
Good night.
Okay, next up are committee updates. Select Board, Jen, not much going on there, so.
No, no. So, yes, so as everybody knows, our town administrator is out on leave. And so the select board has been trying to do what we can to keep things moving forward. We are in the process of trying to kind of get the right access and the right abilities to modify the budgets. So we do ask a little patience while, for a while, we may have to just have some handwritten corrections until we figure out how to get it updated in BMSI and actually get the printed budgets. So for now, I'm happy to make sure the ones as approved by the select board get to this group, which is why I made some changes to the ones that had gone out by email, so you'll have those. I also did confirm that we're going to try to move fire earlier and police a little bit earlier, as we had discussed at the start of this budget season. I just need to confirm a final time with those departments that they are aware of and okay with their new dates, but I believe that they are. I think they were already notified. I'm just going to close that loop to make sure. And so as far as we know, we are going to stick with the appointment schedule. I just gave one around to everybody. It's the only thing that's really different from the very first one that came out is fire is moved earlier and police is moved a little bit earlier. Everything else is the same. And it does line up with the one that you had the red lines on.
Okay,
So we are hoping to be able to stick to this schedule unless something changes. The other thing I brought today is Michelle had asked at the last visit for a summary of ARPA. So that's the other handout I handed out to folks on this committee, which shows what has previously been pledged to ARPA and what is left in that ARPA funds, because that had been a request that was made. So I can answer questions about that if there are any, but I brought that as well. I think those are the only big updates that I have from the select board.
I have a question about
Yes,
COLA.
yes.
Did we get numbers from Three Barons?
Yes, a couple of weeks ago, I don't remember exactly which meeting, we reviewed those numbers and decided to set it the same as last year with 3% COLA and up to 2% merit, which is the same as the year prior.
And did Three Barons give us 3%?
I think it was like 2.9% that they suggested. There was a range of different studies that they look at. So the numbers went from like 2.5 to 3.5 or something like that. And so their suggested average was around 2.9. So we just rounded that to 3 and took their recommendation. There was a community comment, I think last week in public comment, about whether or not newly hired people and people newly in their jobs are eligible for COLA and merit, and in general they tend not to be if they've just started. And so that was one question that had come up about who that applies to, but we did vote on that and pass those numbers unanimously.
And that 3% it's a historical increase in the cost of living. It's not
It's a projection for the next 12 months. That's what Three Barons gives us.
It's a projection?
Yes. Yeah, they do all kinds of, like, it's a couple-page report, and they use all different leading experts they say, you know, this group says it's likely to be this and likely to be this, and then maybe it's going to shift downward over time, and there's all sorts of, it's basically their best guesstimate of what it's going to be. Similar to, I think, how the feds do it for Social Security. It's based on, I think, forward-looking projection for the next year.
Okay.
That's my understanding of how they come up with those numbers. So that's why it's, it's a little bit of a guesstimate that they're making.
Not the way I'm used to looking at it, but
That's my understanding of how those numbers work,
okay.
yeah.
Another one of the comments in public comment at that meeting was keeping that COLA increase at Social Security increase. Was that discussed by the?
We didn't because we had already decided that. The year that we did the big increase in COLA, that really bad inflation year as we were just starting to get out of COVID, we did set it, I think, almost identical to the Social Security rate. That was the year it was like 7 or 8%. So we did use the Social Security number that year, partly, I think, to rationalize to the public why we were picking that number, that it lined up with what the federal government was doing. This year, we did not consider the Social Security number. We just used the three barons recommendations, but it's, I think it was 2.5. It was similar to the number that we picked.
so the projection is that cost of living will be 3% higher a year from now, basically.
I think that's the projection, yeah.
Is that report available to us?
I believe it can be made publicly available. Yeah, I have it. Actually, I have it in the next room if you want me to grab it. But
I don't need it
it's-
now, but
yeah.
I would be interested to.
sure. Has the BudCom generally reviewed that on a year-to-year basis?
We've only ever just gotten a number.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
I don't see why not.
Okay.
One other thing, I guess, to bring up, just for future planning, is there's been some discussion with some of the select board members, given the difficulty that we've been having keeping staff at our fire department, that we may need to do a wage adjustment or a reanalysis of the prevailing wage over for our firefighters, because we're having persistent, ongoing difficulty in keeping people in those positions. And so I know that a couple of select board members have been meeting with the chief to start coming up with some potential proposals that will come forward. So I'm sure this group will hear about those as well.
Do you have a feel for how far away they are from kind of arriving at something? Are we weeks away or months away?
I think relatively quickly. So his budget is supposed to be reviewed in just less than a month. And I think ideally we would like to see those before the final budget comes before us. So I'm thinking in the next couple of weeks, we may see some proposals for some adjustments in that area.
He was hoping to hear something soon, so.
Yeah.
That'll.
Yeah, I think there was just a meeting this week, maybe, or is happening this week about that.
Okay, good. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Very good. Thank you. Brian, anything going on at
Actually,
school?
just one quick.
Whoops.
Sure.
So for the ARPA, everything's been spent except for the money pledged for the voting machine?
Hasn't necessarily been spent. It has to be pledged. So looking at this, I don't know for sure if the chief has already purchased the PFAS-free gear. I don't know, like, if that's actually been purchased and delivered. Everything else on here, yes, looks like it would have already been spent with the exception of the voting machine. Yep.
Okay, if I can start with number 3, that's a question, so I can ask mine tonight. December 16th is the appropriate date for her to present our budget to this committee.
Great.
All right, I will do that. And continuing upwards, back out of order. So SAU budget proposals, is that just the administrative office that we're meeting? That meeting's happening tonight at 6 p.m. As discussed at the September 24th meeting at the library, it's anticipated that there'd be a slight reduction for Brentwood's contribution to the SAU administrative office budget, largely because of the way assessments works in other towns. They have slightly higher assessments. And so because that, it works on a different matrix formula between average daily census, the cooperative and high school, and total assessment in the towns. That reduction is due more to the assessment change in other towns than to any change in average daily census of the schools. They're going to present some different numbers tonight based on, I think, percentage wage increases available to administrative staff, not the top line staff necessarily, but more the office staff. But those will be discussed tonight. But regardless, likely a slight reduction for the town of Brentwood.
Will do you expect they'll have the proposed budget settled tonight, or is that still down the road?
I believe that is to be finished tonight. Shift my different email to.
That's just the small, like SAU administrative
That's just the SAU
budget, right,
administrative
right,
budget, yeah.
So could you send me that or a link to that whenever that
Yes.
gets settled?
And there will be an article in next month's newsletter with a chart of the budget process for the 3 separate budgets. So the Swayze budget, the SAU administrative budget, and the cooperative budget, and the schedules of which those things are going to be happening.
Good.
So that'll appear, first week of November when you get your Brentwood newsletter. All right, and then back to solar panels. So the bond is all set. Building permit is ready to go. All materials are scheduled to arrive this Thursday. The anticipation of the job, the installation will take about 6 weeks. Arrangements been made with the school as far as where vehicles are to park, how the work's going to proceed, and so forth. So still on target to complete the installation by the end of this calendar year.
So they can install while classes are being held without too much disruption?
Yes. Yes.
I was usually easily distracted in class.
I would suspect that second graders seeing trucks might be pretty excited, but Principal Q is comfortable with the work proceeding while class is in session. So I think they'll be starting before children arrive and probably completing before children leave for the day. But that Principal Q is comfortable with proceeding during the school year.
So there was a spreadsheet when revision was up based on the revision proposal. Is there or can there be or will there be an equivalent spreadsheet kind of analyzing the costs, the bond, the operating costs by year?
I will ask for that. So I don't have something like that in hand, but
I think that was it Rick
I believe, yes.
that put that together?
Yep.
It was as good a description of the project as could be imagined. I don't know if that is still applicable to what's being installed, but I think that what's being installed is a little smaller. Okay, so the less money involved, to be borrowed and so on, but it would be helpful if we could do something like that again.
I will ask for that and try to have that for our next, well, maybe not the 28th, but next meeting that I can bring it to.
Yeah, great, thank you. Anything else?
And no, nothing else of note.
What's the attendance like in Swayze and then the other? I mean, are we up? Are we down? Are we?
I'm going to have to take a couple of minutes to dig that out from prior meeting materials I don't have printed out. So when you come back to me, I'll find that.
Yeah, I mean, would it be easier to just send it to us?
Yeah.
Send it to me and distribute it. Just be interested which way the school population is going.
Yep.
Okay, we're done with school. We're on to budgets. And our agreement with the public is that they have an opportunity to speak before we vote. I think that's not gonna take us a lot of time tonight. So, but let's start with Mark, and he's gonna do planning board and ZBA, I believe. Yep, wherever you want to, either one. Thank you.
I'm Mark Kennedy, Land Use Administrator, Town of Brentwood. How would you like to proceed with my budget? Do you want to go line by line?
Tell us, maybe with the highlights, what you would like us to know.
Really, it's kind of set out before you. The FICA and Medicare, that's a 14.7 increase. New Hampshire retirement, that's a 6.5. We had a decrease in legal. For clarification on the circuit rider long range, that $8,500, that's money that we use to update the master plan. We put that under circuit rider because we give Glenn first refusal. If he has time to do it, then he'll get the money. If not, then we'll use an outside source.
Say that again, circuit riders.
Circuit rider, the blue line circuit rider, that's Glenn's pay. The line underneath
Okay,
that,
got it.
the $8,500, that's money that we use to update the master plan. It's under circuit rider because normally he does it. Sometimes he doesn't have time to do it. So I'm just letting you know that's what that money is appropriated for.
Okay.
RCP dues, they went up $473. I put the overtime line. Do you want some explanation on the overtime line? Good.
No, unless you have a brief statement you
I
want
just
to
want
say.
to answer your questions.
Okay, no, so, I mean, you've broken that out because somebody probably on the planning
Oh.
board.
Right, correct. Some days I have some really long weeks. If I have a ZBA meeting and then I have a planning board meeting back to back, I do go over 40 hours. I've elected to take that money in overtime. To do so, you need that in as a line item in your budget. I put it in with just the general pay line. The planning board wanted some more clarity to that. So we removed it and put it in a separate line. Maybe next year that will be increased or possibly decreased. We don't know until we know.
But this way you have it itemized. so
Correct. We have it separated out so we have accountability and transparency.
You can track it, okay.
Yep.
Mark, do you intend, so when we get into BMSI to try to actually get this updated, is the planning board's intention to have that as a complete separate line item? Because right now it's just in the first, it's in the 115 line.
The overtime line?
It's all together.
Yeah, yes, they would definitely like to get that separated out.
Okay.
Please.
That's total will be the same. It's
Correct,
just a different
yeah.
line.
Yeah.
Jen, I also think that you're required to separately state it.
Okay.
There should be already an account.
So the Rockingham planning dues, a small increase. What do we get for the Rockingham planning dues?
I like the way you think. I asked Glenn the same exact question. Is it worth it, you know? And it is. You do get services from Rockingham Planning Commission. We do have members that go there, and they do provide a lot of training along the way, a lot of manuals, a lot of books. Glenn's perspective is that yes, for the money that you spend, it is an asset to your community.
Okay.
And if Glenn didn't feel that he would have told me.
And
And as a commissioner, I was a commissioner for Rockingham County for a while, and it is valuable. What it gives you is a good perspective of outside of Brentwood, as Rockingham County as a whole, of how it all incorporates together and works together to accomplish different things.
And is this the committee that Doug Finnan,
Correct,
is he the representative now?
correct.
Okay.
And Doug Marino. We have two representatives.
Both are,
yes.
okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I'll make a
And
note.
Stephanie is part of the transportation portion of that. She's the representative to the transportation, I believe. So it gives you a much broader picture. Instead of just honing in on Brentwood, it gives you a perspective of how you're linking up with different communities. And you do get to vote on the tip, so you do have voting privileges on the tip. And
I'm sorry, voting privileges?
the tip is transportation money that the state of New Hampshire, Rockingham County Planning Commission works directly with the state of New Hampshire on what projects and infrastructure that will be either updated or built as far as transportation goes. Like what bridges are going to be fixed, what roads are going to be repaired, what larger projects that correspond to different communities need attention. And that's constantly evolving. Because what the Rockingham County Planning Commission puts forward is not always what the state of New Hampshire accepts. And they have different visions of what they want to do first, what they feel. So it's constantly evolving, the tip.
Okay.
But what it does, you know, we all know that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? So if you're there at these meetings and saying, hey, that South Road thing needs attention, we need to do something with that, and it puts it on their radar. It's just not a line at that point. You're advocating for that line, which can go a long way.
Which brings up, where is South Road at this point, that intersection? Where does that stand? No.
I'm not exactly 100%
They
sure.
did the whole
They-
first phase with the turning lane. It's great. And then I think there was one or two little parts on the side, like the turn into Heavenly Donuts, that they were going to maybe do later with additional funding. And then there's still sort of a 10-year plan discussion about doing something different down the line, like potentially a roundabout or something like that,
So they've gone as far as they can.
as far as they are going to in 2024.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's my understanding.
The data just doesn't pan out anything else at right now.
Right.
Things like that really, the tipping point is queuing. When you have a bunch of cars queued up to get out of an intersection, they physically can't do it. That's kind of the marker that you get with what they want to proceed with moving forward. And accidents do, you know, they take all that data into consideration.
Other questions for Mark?
You want to talk about the ZBA at all
Not
on
yet.
here?
Not yet, we will in a minute.
Okay.
Is there a motion for $126,104 for the planning board?
Moved.
Is there a second?
Can I just ask one question, just for clarification? We talked about the raises, so that COLA raise isn't included in here?
No, I do not
You wouldn't
participate in the
be-
COLA this year. I have a separate contract.
Okay,
I can go into that contract if you want.
no need.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm sorry, who made and seconded that? Thank you.
And I'm an aye. Okay. Let's go to legal.
Do you want him to do zoning too?
I'm sorry. Yep, zoning. Forgot already.
Zoning,
Zoning, yes.
pretty straightforward here. most of the budget gets eaten up in planning board. And everything that I do for the ZBA is already in the planning board budget. So these are just sort of placeholders, you know? If we need legal services on the ZBA, we have a bit of funding there. Not only is that legal services that we'd use to defend ourselves, but also if we need counsel in making a decision. That's what that line is. Ads and notices, does the ZBA want to put out a flyer? Does the ZBA, you know, want to send out some mailings? That's where that falls under. Ads, same thing. It's $1,400.
Just that last line, that postage line,
Mm-hmm.
is actually 0 on here, so it would actually be a $1,400 budget. Am I reading that right?
That was at 400.
No, the line below that.
Oh, yeah, maybe
Yeah,
that got
so,
dropped.
yeah, so Jen told us that you're maintaining the $400 for the advertising and notices, but postage underneath that doesn't have anything.
You're right, the one is missing.
So I don't know if you want that one in there as a placeholder or not. I know it's only $1, but it's.
I would just keep it as a placeholder
Okay.
for now. I don't
So
think
it
it's
is
hurting
14
anything, but I know when you remove lines, sometimes it can
Yeah,
be difficult
that's a
to put
good
lines
point.
back in.
I didn't catch that.
So is our total now 127,506?
5. It's actually 5.
I think that one was assumed in the total, the 1401.
Mhm.
Okay.
It just got missed on that line.
It was, she had
No,
sent it as,
she found it, right, she just didn't put it.
Yeah, I just missed that line, didn't have a one.
It includes the 4, includes that line.
I don't think
She
it
doesn't
did.
put it in the-
I don't think it did compared to the other one, but I'll double check it.
I think one's more consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just make
That's
sure there's a
good.
one
I'm
there.
like, what is going on in behind the scenes there?
I know.
Yeah, you included it in your total. It just wasn't.
Yep,
included in
right.
one.
Yeah, that
Change.
625 line was blank.
So it's 1401.
Other questions or comments for the ZBA? Is there a motion for $1,401 for the ZBA?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'm an aye. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to legal.
Legal is level funded from last year at 37,127.
There was a comment at Selectmen's meeting about the rec potentially getting sued for something. I don't know if that was.
That
in
was a
town
small
budget.
claims court.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a small issue.
And we're still comfortable with, as far as 33,500 with,
I think so, yeah. We had increased this budget a couple of years ago due to some ongoing litigation. Some of that is still ongoing. So I think leaving that as a little bit of buffer was the intention.
What do you expect that number to be this year?
Well, there's no way to to guess, but it covered us last year, so we're hoping it will do that again.
Well, where are you year to date, I guess that was more.
Right as of when this was printed, it's at 24,407.
So that's still.
So about 25,000 of that 33 had been expended, and there are still some ongoing
Okay, so that's a good
expenses.
number.
Yeah, so we're coming in under the budget, but there's a little bit of wiggle room there.
2 more months.
That's true.
is there a motion for any further comments, questions on legal? If not, is there a motion for $37,127? I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, motion carries. Executive office,
Executive office is also level funded at $25,005. No changes from last year.
The drug and alcohol testing is for,
New employee hires and things like that, employment testing and pre-employment testing. There will be a change in vendor for that because of Exeter Hospital closing their occupational health division, but we aren't anticipating significant differences in costs. There just will be a different organization that we'll be working with in the future once that current organization closes.
you say no significant.
We don't think there will be a significant cost
Very
difference.
good.
There'll just be a different vendor helping us out with those
Yep.
testing items.
What are the annual medical exams and how come we're so,
Those are the similar things. I think they're employment, pre-employment exams, and those types of things.
are we expecting hiring many people?
I don't know. I think that's been set at 2,000 for a while. You can see we underspent it this year. Obviously, I can't answer all of the historical impacts of this because I'm not Karen, but I believe, I don't know the exact difference between the pre-employment physicals and the annual medical exams, whether some of that is for, I think maybe police and fire have some different requirements for medical exams. I can find that out if that's a pressing question.
No, I was just more interested if it's a requirement, why,
I guess I would be interested in, I would think police and fire would be in their own budgets as opposed to.
I think the new hire costs end up in this budget, though. Like that drug alcohol testing, that's for all different employees of all different departments when they're new hire. So some of that just backflows to this budget.
Okay,
I think this may apply to any employees.
okay.
That's why I'm saying I think pre-employment is one group of people, and then annual medical exams, my gut feeling is that that applies to people who need ongoing medical assessment, or I don't know if this even applies to like, I don't think it applies to, no, because that would be under insurance, like workers' comp exams and stuff. I think
I know that like,
that sounds to me like it's for established employees. I'm sorry, I can't give you the full information on exactly what that entails.
I would think our highway would have to have some.
Might be DOT physicals, yeah. I'm just not really sure what tends to go to that line item. Like I said, we're doing our best here to fill in the gaps where we can.
Yep. And we're gonna get it done. What's LoSAP, which we get a lot for $1?
Don't know.
Don't know, okay.
I can Google it.
It's obviously not very relevant if
Yeah, I
if
don't,
we're
I
just saving
honestly
a line, but.
am not sure what that is, but I'm assuming it's in there for a reason.
Well, it's a good thing it's not HISAP, it'd be a lot more expensive.
Length of service award program, potentially. So that might be if, just as a holding place for doing maybe a financial reward for an employee, potentially. When I Googled it, that's the first thing that came up, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with that.
And consortium,
Not sure.
we apparently have spent nothing for that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that refers to.
I guess just going back to the medical exams, to understand who's responsible for tracking those, or scheduling those and all, because.
I know the pre-employment, Jillian helps with those quite a bit. I'm not really sure, because like I said, I'm not 100% sure what that 253 line item refers to.
Yeah, I'm not worried about pre-employment because that,
Yeah.
would
Yeah, that's an automated.
hopefully everybody, yeah. But if we are required, so like, Massachusetts, I know that, I don't think New Hampshire does, but Mass requires certain physical exams for,
Mhm.
the performance or.
Sure.
They have to run a certain number of miles.
Yeah.
Just because my friends.
I just looked quickly through the 2023 budget, and it doesn't look like that's broken down in separate department, in the department. So
It lives here, yeah.
Just to make sure that we didn't miss a bunch of
Yeah.
medical exams.
I would, I don't think so, but I can certainly ask, I can ask Jillian what she knows about that line item as well.
In case we're like supposed to randomly select X number of employees or something a year, you know, sometimes.
That I don't know.
Further questions or comments about the executive office? Is there a motion for $25,005?
Moved.
Second.
If there's no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I'm an aye. How about assessing?
Assessing is also level funded at 47,901. This is mostly for our property appraisals and electric utilities, and there's no significant changes. All the line items are level funded.
How come there's no expense here
I'm not sure whether maybe that happens at the end of the year. Let's look and see what was expended
For
last
some reason,
year.
they need to assess, I think, the value of the electric utilities in the town.
It was fully spent last year, 14,000, so I think it probably just hasn't hit yet.
So I believe that's a contract that we put money aside. We put the 27,000 aside annually so that when we come to a year, like next year, when we reassess the town.
Right, we have the 2025 reassessment.
Capital
Yeah.
reserve, isn't it?
This, I think, is,
That's capital
I think this is for our,
I think, yes, I presume it goes into a capital reserve.
no, I think this is probably for Jim Michaud's assessment services, is probably what this particular line is in here. Because I think we have a separate, I think we do have a separate capital reserve, don't we, for the reeval?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for that, which happens every 5 years,
Right.
but maybe this is something for new
Oh, okay,
properties or something.
okay. So this is what he does each year
I believe,
then.
my assumption it would be, yes, that's what that line item, it was fully spent last year at 27,020.
Okay.
And actually, Alina, to your question about the prior budget, when I was just looking on here, the annual medical exams last year was $379. This year it's 60, so I'm not, looks like it's variable, but I can ask Jillian.
Well, if it's 60 per person, then there are more people that got
Yeah.
that last year.
Yeah, we can just ask. So yeah, no changes to assessing.
Any further questions on assessing? Is there a motion for $47,901 for assessing?
Moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes. Emergency management,
Emergency management is on the first page. It is level funded with the exception of a decrease. The decrease was that the 810 line item for Seabrook Station was decreased from $8,500 down to $1. The reason for that is that at last year's town meeting, we voted to establish a capital reserve fund that the Seabrook money would go into. And the wording of that capital reserve fund is that payments will go directly out of that fund to pay for emergency management equipment or services, and so we do not need to have it in the budget, but we did want to leave it as $1 as a placeholder if we had an unusual event that we needed to fund for emergencies. So that dropped the budget from 14,875 to 63,76.
So that revolving account will accumulate annually now.
Correct.
The money will go into the revolving account as opposed to,
Correct. So in prior years, if that money was not spent, it would just go into the general fund, and now it is being reserved specifically for emergency, either equipment or services. I think the language allows for a little bit of leeway as long as it's used for emergencies in the town of Brentwood.
and our last emergency was a earthquake. Is that the,
Usually it's more ice, power loss, that type of stuff, but who knows?
okay.
Is there a target balance for that account, or is
I don't think so.
it
I
gets
think,
used regularly?
yeah, I think the benefit of it is there's a lot of leeway, like you can buy road signs, trucks. Rick seemed to think that it wouldn't balloon out of control and just sit there unspent, because there's a lot of leeway in what we could spend it for, and there's always something that emergency management has on their to-do list or their capital improvement list that they'd like to help for emergencies in the town. So he felt comfortable with that 8,500 going in yearly. We could always change it or amend it in the future if that number got too large. Right now, the account has minimal in it because I think we get these payments quarterly, so it's just sort of starting up.
Has it always been 8,500 or?
I believe so. I think that's like the contractual amount that comes from the Seabrook, yeah.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure historically it was a different number, but
The last several years, it was
It's been-
8,500.
yeah. since I've been on the board, it's been 8,500.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion for $6,376 for emergency management?
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. Motion passes. I think we did them all.
I think so.
What about moderator? It wasn't crossed out? The town meeting?
That was not on this week.
It'll come up later.
Sorry, I probably just didn't cross it out good enough.
I was ready to jump on it.
Okay, I distributed the budget expenditures year-to-date, September 18th. Did anybody have any questions about that, or comments, or concerns? It's part of, part of our duty to review that.
I think a lot goes into questioning how things are recognized and at what point in time they're recognized.
Yes.
So it's hard to judge as
It
of
i-
September 18th.
It is hard. I mean, we had 34% left,
Yeah,
and we had 26% of the calendar left overall, so that should work out. I additionally distributed our final audit for 2023. Did anybody have any concerns or comments about that?
haven't had a chance to review it. It's a lot of information.
It is, yes. The only one thing I noticed, which I had discussed with Letty earlier today, and we weren't really 100% sure about, is obviously this final information doesn't match what is published in the town report because it includes prior year encumbrances and other encumbrances. And so you'll see those reflected, that's different than what's in the town report. The only one thing that I was wondering about is that there's one spot where the actual budget doesn't match, and that was under insurance. And I was gonna maybe just look into that a little bit and figure out why that was, because I would think that number probably should have matched what was in the town report, and in this, it comes up a little bit different. It's not a huge difference, it's like a $14,000 difference, but I wasn't sure why that didn't match up with what was in the town report, because everything else, the budget lines up, but the expenditures change. So that one was a little bit off. I didn't know if anybody had any thoughts on why that wouldn't line up.
Which insurance? Like a liability or health?
It's the health, dental, disability, might just be because I know that changes month to month. So that may be why, because it's not a set rate. So that's probably why. That was my gut feeling. It's the only one in the entire budget that doesn't line up. And I assume that's why, because when you budget it, you can't know. I think they tell us, the maximum ceiling that it can hit, but we don't necessarily know what it's going to be month to month. So that's my assumption. And if that's the case, then we guessed pretty good because it was only off by $14,000. But other than that, everything lined up. And one thing that I was also thinking about this is in terms of when we make the town report this year. So I think sometimes when I review the total budget and expenses in the town report, it looks a little bit frustrating sometimes because it ends up looking like we underspent our budget by more than we did, because it doesn't include things like encumbrances and other things that aren't in the standard budget and expenses. So like when I look at this document that shows we had 5.6% of our budget left, that to me shows like that was a pretty good budget that we were operating under. Whereas if you look at it in the way that it's published in the town report, there's a much wider spread. And so it might be worth us thinking about when we're going to communicate to the public whether some of these numbers, I would think by town meeting, most of these numbers are set. By the time we publish the book, maybe they're not. So maybe that's why we don't do it that way. But it was helpful to me to look at this and see that when you look at the totals, that we actually did a pretty good job budgeting, and that came in, just within 5.66% of our total budget. It's just kind of a different way to look at the budget and expenditures than what shows in the town report.
Does the town report show the encumbrances?
It doesn't. So like if you look in the town report, it shows our spending last year like 5.7 million. And then when you look at this one, it's 6.1 million. So there's that difference there that I think the public sometimes doesn't see and ends up feeling like our budget is inflated because they're not really seeing all of the nuts and bolts that go into it at the end of the day. So we might just want to think about if there is some way to communicate that to the public. It might make more sense to some people, depending on how people's minds work.
I would think we would have a good idea. Well, I don't know exactly when that town report goes to print, so.
I'm not sure, yeah.
But I would think the departments would have a pretty good idea what encumbrances they would need.
It's usually finalized by early February, I want to say, when all the everything's closed up finally for the year. All the bills are in, all the encumbrances are taken care of. So just might be something we want to think about in terms of trying to communicate as transparently as possible with the public what is actually spent.
Jillian might have an idea of the timing for those things. I'm not sure, but 6% is quite good.
Yeah.
Compared to our neighbors and compared within the state to come that close to with your appropriations. So, okay, the thing that caught my eye in the audit was that there is actually a limit on the amount the town can borrow set by RSA, and that limit is 3% of what our town assessment is, which works out to, in round numbers, about $22 million is the amount the state will let us borrow up to that amount, and we're already borrowed almost $1.5 million. So in round numbers, we could borrow 20 million. I have no interest in getting anywhere near 20 million. But I don't know whether the school's bond is added in, this total or not. I mean, that could be looked into, what was the amount for the school? It was like 800,000 or?
It's a little less than that.
The
It was
solar,
650
600-ish?
Between 6 and 650.
Yeah.
So, in any event, it's something to, I think it's something to be aware of as
Yeah,
these
that's a
large
helpful
projects
Number.
become considered. And in the page that I distributed to you, it also itemizes the bonds payable that we have currently. We have one that will mature next year, but then not another one until 2027. So that's just general information. Let's see, capital reserve funds, you all got the most recent list of capital reserve funds as we go through the budget. And you also got a schedule of impact fees year to date. And just to comment on one thing, the town discontinued the age 55 rules, but they were still in place when River Run was begun. And that's why there's no impact fees for Swayze, the middle school, or the high school. Everybody knows what impact fees are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, somebody's working on improving the announcement for the next public hearing. I think it's Letty, but I'm not sure. The capital improvements program, everybody got that? And in particular, the spreadsheet kind of itemizes all those items. Next year, I think we should have try to have some kind of indication of what the priorities are for each department. And I think that would be easy to indicate, but I'll work with Glenn about that. Actually, while we're here, the Historical Society, those 4 items are what Dexter would like us to be particularly focused on when he gives us a tour of the Grange Hall. Yes, I wrote, I would like to be able to list the sketches of Brentwood file, both of them, the complete file and the summary on the website under the Budget Committee. Is that, everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I think that's helpful information.
Okay. I don't think we need a formal vote for that. Okay, yes, Jen mentioned the fire department, and the chief is concerned enough that he asked to meet with me, so
Oh, great.
so that we would be aware of what's happening. I mean, the select board is handling the situation, but it was enough on his mind so that he asked to meet, and I thought it was going to be about the ALS, the Exeter Hospital ambulance situation, but he said that they're working with other towns to try to resolve that issue. But what he says is he's understaffed now. He's got an open position. He was in the process of losing another full-time firemen, and he feels that the department is underfunded for for an appropriate number of firemen for the size town we have. So I presume he's looking at a schedule of some kind that indicates that if you have 4,500 residents, you should have some number, some relative number of fire service people. That's what I think John and Letty maybe are working on, a plan, and not just a one-year plan, but maybe it might run out 4 or 5 years.
Sure.
On top of that, the chief is close to retirement, and he would like to retire, and there's no obvious in-house replacement for him. So there's a lot of moving parts there. That leaves a lot of moving parts in the fire department situation. So that's just information. I don't think we have time to resolve that all right here tonight, so.
Probably not.
There was scheduled a meeting tonight at 6 o'clock concerning the municipal building. I don't know if that meeting is still,
No, that was canceled. That was the public comment
Yeah.
session. They've been fairly minimally attended. There were 0 town attendees at the last one.
okay,
And a hold was put on that. And at the next municipal building meeting, I think the group is going to have a high-level discussion about what the next steps are. I think, as everybody knows, we got an initial quote back from our contractors or our consultants that was much, much higher than anticipated. And so there were some discussions about talking to some other local groups about more realistic numbers. We're obviously not going to move ahead with a number that is in the 20 million plus. We know the public will not be in favor of that, nor was the committee. So I think there's going to be some discussions about what comes next for that committee and what the timeline is going to look like for that committee, with the understanding that there may not be time to really push that ahead for town meeting next year, but there might be. So it's really just, I think that committee needs to kind of have a little bit of a check-in with each other to decide what direction we're going to go forward from here.
you have an idea when that next meeting would be?
Yes, they're usually, I think it's probably next week. Let me see if it's on my calendar. They're usually on Tuesdays. Let me see if it's on the 29th. Tuesday, October 29th, here at 1:30 in the afternoon will be that next building meeting.
Okay,
If you could, if they could decide on the public comment times sooner, they're not very well advertised, which is probably why I don't have anyone show up.
Yeah, I don't really know how they were. I know they're on the town calendar, but I don't know how widely they were advertised.
I know
Sounds
they're
like not very well.
I know they're not put in the newsletter. They
Oh,
don't
okay.
announce them
Okay.
in advance enough to get them in the newsletter. So if they could project those
Sure.
dates a little better, we could maybe
Sure.
get a little more input. with
Sure.
that.
yeah, for what it's worth, tonight's meeting is still on the calendar.
I thought it had been removed, but if it hadn't, then I'm officially announcing that it is being canceled.
Okay, got it.
Partly those were run by Chief Ventura and he's out on leave. So we're just trying to adjust a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, our next regular meeting is October 28th at 6 o'clock. Everybody okay? Going to be able to make that meeting? With what?
Coming back on Monday, I'm just not sure what time.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to open for public comments, and now it's closed.
Quickest public comment ever.
Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Everybody off to the,
I need a second.
Oh.
Second, sorry.
Boy, you guys want to stay here all night? Or what? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Thank you all.
Thank you. And that meeting tonight is listed on the website as postponed.
Oh, good. Did you just do that?
I think maybe Letty did it earlier today or yesterday. I think it was relatively recently.
I looked this afternoon and it was still on there, so.
Yeah, we announced at our meeting last week that it was being postponed, but I'm not sure the website was updated right away.
So now, turn this off.